Tina Turner is an absolute legend, the queen of rock and roll, paving the way for artists like Janet Jackson, Beyonce, Madonna, Mick Jagger, Joan Jett, and performers for generations to come. Before MTV was even a force, Tina Turner was doing choreography in heels and pushing the limits of female sexuality, foreshadowing what was to come for decades. Yet her lengthy career and enduring influence has often been haunted and overshadowed by the abuse she experienced at the hands of her ex-husband, Ike Turner. In an age where fans and the media are constantly re-evaluating how women have been mistreated at the hands of the media and onlookers, Tina Turner instantly comes to mind. One of the world's most significant and important entertainers being reduced, mocked, and even taunted about her traumatic abuse. The road of becoming, being, and existing as Tina Turner was no easy road for Anna Mae. Anna Mae grew up on a cotton field in Nutbush, Tennessee. While growing up, she often witnessed physical abuse between her parents. By the age of 11, Anna's mother, Zelma Priscilla Curry, would run off with another man. Her father eventually remarried and also left Anna and her siblings, which led to Anna being left with other family members. By 1957, she went on to live with her mother in St. Louis. She became a fan of Ike Turner's band, and after witnessing them play, she eventually began singing for him. She was 17. Ike was amazed at her vocal abilities, and their artistic relationship developed to the point she would be singing with him every single week. He began to shower her with gifts, and they fell in love. Anna Mae never set out to be a star. It was never her intention. She also had deep insecurities as a young girl, and felt like no one loved her. She sang in the church choir, which is where her talent developed, but it was never her goal to be a superstar. Ike helped her hone her craft. He was an accomplished songwriter and artist in his own right, but always felt people used him to get a hit and never came back, which is when Tina would arrive. The name Tina Turner was Ike's creation. He had formed a brand with him and Tina, named Ike and Tina. At first, unbeknownst to her. While Ike might have given her the name, no one else could have filled Tina's shoes. The talent was pre-existing. Giving Tina her name and public persona seemed to be Ike's first foray into gaining more control over the star he had by his side. Tina was self-admittedly naive, and when they got their first hit at the beginning of the 60s, Ike became even more controlling, and the abuse would increase. Tina had made him a promise that she would never leave him, unlike his other musical partners, after they got a hit, and she felt obligated to stay. Children came into the picture, and by 1962, they were married. During that period, Tina details horrific incidents she experienced at the hands of Ike, brutal beatings, then put on stage to perform right after, mental abuse, and physical fights that resulted in black eyes. And the abuse became even worse as the pressure to achieve another hit weighed on Ike. Tina claims that Ike would become increasingly angry and more on the edge. By the 1970s, Ike and Tina had broken through the mainstream media with their classic rendition of Proud Mary. Tina says at this point in her life she was loyal to Ike, but no longer in love with him. He threw hot coffee in my face, giving me third-degree burns, she writes. He used my nose as a punching bag so many times that I could taste blood running down my throat when I sang. He broke my jaw, and I couldn't remember what it was like to not have a black eye. The abuse got so bad that it pushed Tina to attempt to commit suicide, saying that her suicide wasn't a cry for help. When I took those pills, I chose death, and I chose it honestly. I was unhappy when I woke up, she says. Tina would eventually find solace in Buddhism. After being introduced to it by a friend, she felt freer and motivated with her practices of the religion, and it would help build her confidence. As the 70s decade progressed, Ike's drug use worsened. One day after a physical altercation, Tina managed to escape from Ike to a nearby hotel, going into hiding for quite some time, and in that same year of 1976, she filed for divorce. The divorce was settled in 1978. Tina famously gave up everything, including real estate, publishing royalties, and cars. Outside of some jewelry, she kept her stage name, which is quite a powerful move. Although Tina now had her independence, The road after leaving Ike was not peachy keen. She lived on food stamps, had no money, and struggled to pay off debt. With Ike allegedly sending his goons to shoot up her house, Tina had a long road ahead of her. For a while, she performed on TV shows and became a showy Vegas act, participating in steamy cabaret shows to pay the bills. Unfortunately, this revamped Tina had an adverse effect when it came to Turner being taken seriously as an artist and attaining a sustainable presence in the music industry, despite her already established expertise. The shadow of Ike lingered over her, commonly being asked about him in interviews. In the late 70s, she met Roger Davies, who became her manager. She had a dream of becoming the first black rock and roll artist to tour the stadiums. Her label didn't believe in her capabilities, and she even faced some racism. A top Capitol Records executive described Tina as an old nigger douchebag, and questioned A&R representative John Carter on why he signed Tina, and said that she's allowed to make a record, but they would not promote it or do anything for it. After constantly being bombarded by the press about Ike, she went to People magazine and let the story of her abuse be known in a very detailed and stripped interview, which created a media frenzy, but also made people want to root for her. It was the first time Tina ever detailed the abuse she had experienced publicly from her former 16-year marriage. It was quite a revolutionary move, and also a decade where people didn't often openly speak about domestic violence or abuse. She wanted to tell the story of her abuse and be done with it. Unfortunately, that would not be the case. Some call it a comeback. Tina calls it her very first arrival. She completely changed her look, style, hair, and music. She reshaped and redefined who Tina Turner was, which is now set in stone as her iconic look. She famously kept her stage name, and with this album, she reclaimed it in more than just literal ownership. She went to England to work on the album, and pieced together some heavyweight classics, including her signature song, What's Love Got to Do With It? She performs evocatively, not only on stage, but with her voice. Tina absolutely hated her signature hit at first listen, but it was eventually reworked into what we know it as now. A year before the release of Private Dancer, Tina was nearly dropped. The following year, she was the hottest artist on the roster, and swept at the Grammy Awards, winning Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best Female Pop Vocal, and Best Female Rock Performance, with the album itself selling over 11 million copies, with some reports of it selling upwards of 20 million copies. The album brought Tina Turner into new territory sonically, while having tinges of her signature Southern style, exploring elements of rock, jazz, contemporary pop, and soul, with the glitz of Europop. It introduced her to a new audience, while her old audience got to see her transition into spaces she had never seen before. At 44 years old, Tina Turner had accomplished her career-defining album. Private Dancer is a triumphant record for many reasons. Tina Turner had conquered Vegas stereotypes, shabby label executives, racism, and ageism. By the time her next tour came around, she achieved her goal of wanting to fill stadiums. Her show in Brazil remains the largest paying concert audience by a female artist, with 180,000 fans in attendance. More than anything, Private Dancer is a statement of Tina's independence. Tina was distinctively her own vision and creation, yet all the media wanted to talk about was Ike. She was bombarded with questions about Ike, and oftentimes outright asked graphic details about her abuse.
You talked about victim, and of course the book and the movie features your allegations about his bashings. Tell me about that.
You like to hear that?
That's what it's all about.
I have to make a joke. It's my only way of communicating. Is that it was ugly to me, and the people found it out. How can I explain that to you? I never would have let the people know. But I think it was one of those times again when that had a lot to do with me going to where I was going. As long as I kept that under the rug, it might have held me back as well.
You had to bring it to closure, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And actually,
yes,
that's when it started to.
Yeah. And people won't leave it alone. I'm constantly reminded. It's been nearly 20 years.
No cosmetic surgery, truly.
There's a difference in cosmetic surgery and corrective surgery, right? Let's talk about cosmetic for beauty. I have had basically my face bashed in, and I never did anything about it.
I know.
I just went through my life because I was all right. And then I started to have problems traveling with my sinuses, and I found that how my nose had healed many times and the whole of
You
the
busted
mouth.
your nose.
Yes, many times. But it was never really, really broken. But I guess
What makes it worse is Tina always showed visible signs of being undeniably uncomfortable. Tina herself wondered why, after all the success she had achieved, why did they only want to talk about Ike, and she became depressed over it. The media completely sensationalized and dehumanized her abuse to the point that it seemed like people became more fascinated with looking at her abuse as drama and hot topics instead of what it truly was, brutal abuse. It was treated more like a petty celebrity feud instead of the brutal act that it was. Tina's manager told her she should write a book to suppress the Ike frenzy for once and for all. She was reluctant but hopeful that it would finally put an end to all the questionings. And so she did. It was released 2 years after Private Dancer in 1986, simply titled I, Tina. The book emerged as a phenomenon that was both damaging and healing. It became a strength and inspiration for women in abusive relationships. Unfortunately, the effect of the book was not so kind to Miss Turner herself. She had intended for the book to stop the questioning of Ike, but it only propelled it even more. In the meantime, Tina continued to release commercially successful albums, and her career was more viable than it had ever been, effectively establishing an international fan base and cementing herself as one of the greatest live performers of all time. The popularity of the book would lead to the 1993 biographical film titled What's Love Got to Do with It?, noted for Angela Bassett's stellar performance. While Tina seemingly supported the film and Angela Bassett, she was hesitant to watch the movie and reportedly hasn't watched it fully to this day. In 2018, she stated that she couldn't finish the film. In addition, she also didn't like some of the film's inaccuracies. As Tina Turner would gradually get older, she retreated from the spotlight. Since then, Tina Turner's abuse has become a go-to reference in songs. The numerous amount of times it has been cited is quite astounding and plentiful. While music has always been a free art form, it shows that little consideration can go into the effect of something that is being amplified over and over for years and even decades. While Tina Turner first putting her story out into the world would inevitably be talked about and perhaps even questioned, how these questions were delivered were downright disgusting, unprofessional, and often crude. Furthermore, she had achieved all the success in the world, but still, the media only wanted to know about the man that abused her. The misogyny she experienced was rampant. While it would be nice to say that Tina Turner is healed, happy, and is completely vindicated to her new life, it is not the case. Tina Turner's story is ongoing. At the age of 81, she still suffers PTSD from a relationship that happened decades ago. Trauma just doesn't disappear into thin air. She's still surviving, and it's something she's still actively processing to this day. Erwin Bach, her current husband, stated, "She has dreams about it. They're not pleasant. It's like when soldiers come back from the war. It's not an easy time to have those in your memory and then try to forget it." Turner added, "That scene comes back. You're dreaming it. The real picture is there. It's like a curse." Tina has made it clear she is proud of who she is and what she has accomplished in her career, but she is ready to just live her life away from the spotlight. After suffering a stroke in 2013, in 2018, Turner announced that she had beaten intestinal cancer. She had discovered the rare disease early and had part of her intestines removed in 2016. She also had kidney failure. The pain was so excruciating that she had signed up for an assisted suicide program. Her husband, Urim Bach, would eventually give her one of his kidneys. But that's not to say Tina isn't actively enjoying her life. Tina is in a healthy relationship with her current husband, and they live in Switzerland. She does not miss performing, although she loved it. She's just happy to enjoy life. The 81-year-old performer recently sold her music rights to German music company BMG for a reported $50 million. The deal includes recordings, writings in Turner's name and likeness, spanning across the work of 10 studio albums, soundtracks, and other compilations. Tina Turner dedicated her life to entertainment, and now she is enjoying her tranquil retirement. Ike is undeniably a part of Tina's story, but he is not Tina's story. In fact, she accomplished more without him. So when pondering upon her legacy, influence, and life story, show some respect. Tina Turner helped shape the performer-singer standard in pop and rock music, and her contributions cannot go understated. She is a survivor in every sense of the word.